Welcome to the Family Leaders Legislative Update. We had quite a week last week, and we've got a big week coming up this week. So why don't we get started? Greg, I'm excited about teaching the Bible study with you this Thursday. Yes. You are one of the best evangelists I've ever met, and I've learned from you, and I've also been convicted by God that I need to share the gospel more. Last week I had a chance to share the gospel of several pages, and it went phenomenally well, and so I'm getting over some of my reluctance. Why don't you share your heart on sharing the gospel at the Capitol?
Yeah, there's plenty of days, Chuck, that I still get reluctant. I'm not near as bold. As Paul says, I'm not ashamed of the gospel. Unfortunately, some days I am ashamed. I am afraid to share it. But overall, I really work to stretch my limits. If we're truly going to change this culture, Chuck, the only way it's going to change is the gospel.
That's right.
Like 4 years ago, I was pro-gay marriage and pro-choice. Wow. And you never would have changed my mind arguing back and forth with me.
Okay.
What changed my mind was coming to Jesus Christ, reading the scriptures on a daily basis and applying it into my life. It gradually changed me. It still changes me today. And that's what changed my worldview in politics. So if we truly want to change this culture, Christians have to get out and share. It's time to get out of the pews, quit hiding behind the church programs, and get out and share the gospel.
Greg, this Thursday we want people to come and join us, 7:30 a.m. I know it's early, but it's supposed to be 40 degrees on Thursday.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Right.
I'm coming to the Capitol in the shorts, Chuck.
So yeah, wear your Bahama shorts and Bermuda, and come Thursday morning, 7:30 to 8 a.m. in room 103 at the Capitol. It should be a great time. Last week we had some progress on Common Core. Tamara, why don't you share about that?
Well, it depends how you define progress, but if more people learning about it, becoming aware of it is helpful, then yes, we've had some great progress. We've had wonderful meetings. What's amazing, and I'm holding it in my hand, is the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, that most legislators don't even know exist because they were bypassed. Mm-hmm. Like most states, the legislature was bypassed when governors signed this. This was the bribe to say, I would like a chance at the Race to the Top funds you all heard about a couple years back. Yeah. To get a chance at those funds, you had to sign basically your state away. We lose our sovereignty with this agreement, and we have it online. It's on the Concerned Women for America Facebook page or website, and we'll get it on this website as well. But on page 3 of that, it simply says that we'll agree to the decisions of the consortium, and also that we'll change laws, regulations, barriers that would prohibit the consortium from accessing the information they wish to get from our students. Right there, we've lost our sovereignty. When we say that we'll change state laws, the legislature was not only bypassed, they're now going to be irrelevant in the future. And most of them don't even know. That's this contract signed by Culver, and again signed by Governor Branstad, 2011.
Affirmed by Branstad. The great news to me was after you came out of a couple of key meetings with key leaders, they were listening. They didn't know about this.
They didn't know.
So we're making progress. That's good.
And there's a core group of legislators who do know about the Memorandum of Understanding. They know what Iowa is doing and not doing, and they're meeting and they're trying to come up with ways to address the problem.
Right.
One of those, Sandy Salmon, has awed you and me in her ability to understand and then articulate it into amendments. So we need to pray for Representative Salmon and for Representative Watts and others who probably will be offering amendments maybe even this week.
Right.
And Sandy Salmon actually put the entire Republican caucus on notice back in December.
She did.
Alerting them to this issue and giving them the information. So this is not a last minute effort.
No, heavens no.
It's not, and you know, she's mystified at the ignorance. I was somewhat mystified at the ignorance last December when we were talking about this. But the fact is, Common Core is complex. And legislators only have so much time on certain issues. And so they rely on experts. So thank God you and Denise.
We have stayed on this all summer long. I beat the trail on this all fall at different events, talking wherever I could. This may come up for a vote. We have the one bill, House Study Bill 592. It hasn't been renumbered yet. It hasn't come back out. And until it gets numbered, Sandy can't put her amendments on it.
Right.
So that's the frustration that we face, and those amendments have to be out 24 hours ahead.
Yeah, we have to watch that bill on a daily basis because my guess is if they decide to move it, there won't be a lot of time.
Danny, speaking of crises in our education system, we had a couple of issues come up last week. You want to share about the suicide issue and the bullying issue?
There's two bills that they're troubling from two different perspectives. The first one, that they're even needed in the first
Right.
place.
That's troubling.
The governor has proposed the Bully-Free Iowa Act of 2014. The Bully-Free Iowa Act of 2014. And essentially, it's legislation that requires the Department of Education to train teachers. They can't renew their license unless they're trained. And it allows school districts to go outside the school building, out into the community and the homes, and monitor bullying and then do something about it. The regrettable thing is that that's needed in the first place.
Right.
And then right on the heels of that is a bill in the Senate, the Suicide Prevention Bill, that sets up a new organization to prevent suicide, again, to require training. Now teachers have to be trained, taking time away from classroom instruction to be trained on bullying, to be trained on suicide prevention. And Chuck, as you and I were talking, is this an indictment or what on the state of affairs today in this society and in our schools, that we're spending all this time trying to control bullying, to prevent suicide and minister to families that are affected by suicide? And I can't help but think that over the last 40 years, we've been building to this situation. Because what have we been telling children for these last 40 or 50 years? Your birth was an accident. You were not created in the image of God.
Evolved.
It was a process of evolution. And even then, when you were conceived, your actual birth was optional.
Abortion.
You could have been aborted, killed in the womb. And we've taught kids that there's no hope of heaven. So their conception was an accident, their birth was optional, and they have no hope. And then we wonder why we have to go in our schools and talk about bullies and suicide prevention. You know the real miracle? The miracle is that it's not a lot worse than what it is.
That's true.
Good grief. It's baffling to me.
Well, what are some solutions? I mean, you and I have talked about some proposed amendments. We've also looked at what the Founding Fathers said about education. There are some solutions to this. You want to share briefly what we've talked about there?
Well, there is no substitute for parental involvement in education.
Good parental involvement.
And I don't care if your kids go to public school. There are some very effective and great parents who send their kids to public school, but they don't just send them there blindly. They know what's going on. They know what the teachers are doing. They're aware of Common Core and the indoctrination that the government is trying to bring into that. They're showing up at the Capitol, doing
Yes,
something
they
about
are.
it. You know, Tamara,
Yeah.
you've been
On
working.
snowy, blowy days, they drive 3 hours to come in.
Not being well treated by there either.
And
No.
they're moms.
Yeah.
They're not bureaucrats.
And
They're not
dads.
politicians. Moms and dads, parents who say, wait a minute, we don't like this.
You know,
Parent involvement, parent choice.
when one of the representatives wanted to kill Common Core a couple weeks ago before final, I said, beware the wrath of a citizen scorned, especially a mama bear. And there were some mama bears there, and thank God they're there. So parental involvement. Another thing that our founders talked about was actually teaching scriptural principles. The same Congress that passed the First Amendment onto the states for ratification passed legislation to fund Bibles in the
Yes.
Washington, D.C. public schools. So tell me that the First Amendment prohibits that? That's absurd to the max.
We'll go back to
Not
the
to the people
intent.
who wrote it.
Dr. Benjamin Rush, the founder of so many colleges and universities, said, if we take the Bible out of the school, I fear to think how much time and money we'll spend punishing crime when it would take so little to prevent it.
You
That's
know,
a
and-
great quote. We need to get that in before the legislators as they're debating these bills.
Do you remember when Ravi Zacharias came to the prayer breakfast a couple of years ago? He said if we had more Bibles in the schools, we wouldn't need as many bars in these jails.
Half the reason we're dealing with the issues we are is what they are teaching and what they're not teaching.
But do you realize how radical this is? That we're sitting here talking about bringing the Bible back into schools?
But it wasn't until 1963. It was
I know
common
it.
practice
I
in
know it.
America.
But there are people watching this right now who are thinking that we're a bunch of nuts.
Well, and I'm curious, why is it not censorship to remove the Bible? It's censorship to remove those filthy books that come with the exemplar list on Common Core, but it's never censorship to remove the Bible.
Well, as the lawyer in the bunch here, I'll tell you what happened. We got pagan judges on our United States Supreme Court, and they turned precedent on its head. They threw out the founder's viewpoint on God and Christ, And we're in a pretty pass now because of it.
Yeah.
This is one more reason we need massive revival. If the people rise up, if parents rise up, begin to teach their children again and get involved in the schools, this could change. We got to have hope, and the hope is Jesus Christ and His Word.
Chuck, I know we're running short on time, but this coming week is going to be some key debate as we start looking at that second funnel. It's going to come sooner than we think.
Next week.
So people need to be engaged in this legislative
And don't even worry
session.
about the bills, the bill numbers. Just talk to your legislators at coffees, at forums. Call them at home. What they do affects everything you do in your home. Call them at their home. But let them know, no Common Core, no anti-bullying bill. None of us support bullying, absolutely, but this bill doesn't correct it. And even the suicide prevention, as you say, but I would add also the bandwidth that they want to expand in the public schools is another way of etching in and bringing in the Common Core. And it's going to be too costly for us to do it at the state level. It should be a local district thing. So you get the bids and the better estimates that way. So just to have conversations with your legislators. Don't worry about the bill numbers. Talk to them about the issues
Communicate.
briefly. Be bright, be brief, be gone.
Two more things quickly before we wrap up. One is that the bill that the House passed to stop the practice of chemical abortion remotely throughout the states
Through the internet.
through the internet. It's called Telemed Abortion Ban. That's in the Senate. Herman Kornbach is the floor manager. Mike Gronstall put Herman Kornbach as the manager. Those two are very supportive of Planned Parenthood and continuing the abortion regime. And so we need you folks to talk to the senators, especially Gronstall and Kornbach. And if you'll go to our website, you can get the information on how to do that. One other issue, ending on a very bright note, my wife and I have adopted several children, and there is a great bill in the House to encourage more adoption, especially adoption of special needs children. And so we will be promoting that bill. We'll be encouraging more tax credits for those who enter into the very expensive process of adoption. And we thank God for legislators who are willing to promote pro-life, pro-family bills like this. There's some good things happening at the Capitol. Thanks for joining us. Stay informed, stay involved, stay prayerful. God bless you from the Family Leader.